Our world is a tapestry of cultures, each thread contributing to the vibrant and rich mosaic of human civilization. Embracing and preserving cultural diversity is not only a moral imperative but also a source of strength and innovation. One compelling argument for the value of cultural diversity is its role in fostering creativity and problem-solving. When people from diverse backgrounds come together, they bring with them unique perspectives and experiences that can lead to innovative solutions to complex challenges. Moreover, cultural diversity promotes tolerance and empathy. Exposure to different cultures and viewpoints helps break down stereotypes and prejudices, promoting a more inclusive and harmonious society. In today's interconnected world, it is crucial that we recognize and celebrate the beauty of cultural diversity. By doing so, we not only enrich our own lives but also contribute to a more tolerant, equitable, and peaceful global community. In our quest for a sustainable future, renewable energy sources stand as a beacon of hope. This transformative shift from fossil fuels to renewables carries undeniable benefits for both our environment and economy. One compelling argument for embracing renewable energy is its environmental impact. Unlike fossil fuels, renewable sources like solar and wind power generate electricity without emitting harmful greenhouse gases. By reducing our reliance on carbon-intensive fuels, we can combat climate change and reduce air pollution. Furthermore, the renewable energy sector is a significant driver of economic growth. It creates jobs, fosters innovation, and reduces our dependence on imported fossil fuels. As the world transitions towards clean energy, there is a wealth of opportunities for economic development and investment in renewables. By prioritizing and investing in renewable energy, we not only safeguard our planet but also pave the way for a more prosperous and sustainable future. The time to act is now, and the benefits are clear.
The heyday of the English landscape garden was the 18th century, and it stood for many things. The appreciation of natural beauty, of course, but also the idea of a civilized life, good taste, one's personal philosophy, and one's social status. Gardens also, though it is hard for us to credit, became expressions of their owners' political affiliations. Until the picturesque style emerged as part and parcel of the Romantic movement, gardens had been strictly formal, laid out with mathematical precision following the Italian and French examples. There then came a backlash against this rigid formality, led by, among others, the poet Alexander Pope. Pope and his allies argued for a more natural nature. Lord Burlington was a major figure in the landscape garden movement, and he was famously influenced by his love of the Italian architect Andrea Palladio, along with the picturesque or romanticized landscapes of Italian classical painting. With these in mind, he scattered his gardens and parks with classical Greek and Roman temples and statues. In other words, he wanted to make the garden look like those paintings.
Yes, it's funny you should mention Merwin. Until about a year ago, I thought England was the only country that had a poet laureate. After all, it's a pretty odd job, isn't it? No salary to speak of and just a barrel of wine or something as payment. But he was, or is, the American poet laureate, isn't he?
That's right, but quite a few other countries have one too.
I know. I looked into it a bit. Other countries in the UK, for a start. Wales, as you'd expect, with their Eisteddfods and long poetic tradition. And Ireland and Scotland. I think some places that were colonies or in the Commonwealth have them. Canada, for example. And who's that wonderful Caribbean poet? The one that wrote Omeros.
Derek Walcott.
That's him. He was the poet laureate of St. Lucia. But what about the rest of Europe? Don't the French have such a thing?
No, I don't think so. They've got the Academy, and you get elected to that if you're considered the best in your field. But I think Germany might have. No, it wasn't Germany. Somewhere else, but I don't remember. By the way, you're a bit behind the times in thinking what they get paid as a barrel of wine. All that changed long ago. But one of the more recent ones asked to have it back.
The World Health Organization says 12 years ago, India alone was responsible for almost 70% of all polio cases around the world. It calls India's success against polio one of the most significant achievements in public health. WHO officials say India's accomplishment proves the crippling disease can be eliminated in even the most challenging circumstances with a strong political commitment. The number of polio cases has decreased from an estimated 350,000 a year to 33 since the WHO launched its global eradication campaign in 1988.
India has downplayed the impact of U.S. plans to end New Delhi's preferential trade status that allows duty-free access to products worth $5.6 billion, saying that India has not assured the United States that it will provide equitable and reasonable access to its markets. U.S. President Donald Trump has directed the U.S. Trade Representative's office to remove India from a program that grants it preferential trade treatment. In 2017, India was the biggest beneficiary of the Generalized System of Preferences, which lowers duties on exports from about 120 developing countries. The Indian Commerce Secretary told reporters in New Delhi that India has no plans to impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods.
Could garages make good housing for the homeless? That's the idea behind the Pop-Up House project, a project to turn rows of disused garages in London into temporary accommodation for homeless people. It would allow a small home to be created, with a bedroom and shower room, and then every fifth garage in the line would be used as shared laundry, kitchen and eating facilities. The homes would be put together by the people who will live in them in the future, with the idea of teaching them building skills as well as giving them a home. It's hoped that because they will have their own space, their own front door, they'll be more likely to get back into society more quickly than by putting them into shared accommodation. We know people don't do well in that environment. And it will give them the education they need to get back into work.
It's common sense that some objects are harder than others. We refer to this characteristic as hardness. But what exactly is hardness? Let me tell you. It's the ability of a material to resist being damaged, scratched, or marred in any way. There's even a way to measure it. It's the Mohs scale of hardness. A German scientist, a mineralogist named Friedrich Mohs came up with the scale in 1812. Here's how he made it. Mohs took 10 different minerals. Then he rated them from 1 to 10 based on their ability to withstand damage and to damage other materials. Talc received a rating of 1. It's soft, it's easily scratched, and can hardly damage anything. Diamond received a rating of 10. It's the hardest natural substance known to man. The other objects on the scale that number from 2 to 9 are gypsum, calcite, fluorite, apatite, feldspar, quartz, topaz, and corundum. I see worried looks on your faces. Don't worry about writing them down. They're listed on page 234 of your text. Take a look. Now, what about the hardness of other objects? It depends on which of the 10 minerals can scratch them. For instance, your fingernails get a rating of 2.5 on the Mohs scale. So talc and gypsum can't scratch them, but calcite can. What are some others? Let's see. Iron is rated between 4 and 5. Glass is between 6 and 7. And steel is close to 8.
Land animals move easily through air because air does not slow them down. Sea creatures, on the other hand, have to move through water, which is hundreds of times thicker than air. A sea animal has to push itself through water in order to move. Sea animals use many different ways to swim, creep, or glide through water. Fish are able to swim by bending their bodies into waves. They have flattened fins and tails that push against the water like oar blades, converting their body waves into forward movement. The size of a fish's tail contributes to its swimming speed. Small tail fins are found in slow swimmers like the eel. The medium-sized tail of the bass is linked with a medium to fast swimming speed. Long pointed tail lobes like those on the marlin are found only on fast swimmers. Sea mammals like whales and dolphins swim in a very fish-like way, except for one important difference. Because their ancestors lived on the land, they developed tails that moved up and down. Whales and dolphins wave their tails up and down rather than side to side like fish do. The seahorse is a fish whose tail is not used for swimming at all. The seahorse uses its thin, coiled tail to attach itself to seaweed, like a monkey's tail holds onto a tree branch. Squids and octopuses move in a completely different way. They use a type of jet propulsion, shooting water out through a nozzle to force themselves along. And then there are the creatures that live on the bottom of the sea. Sea slugs, limpets, and whelks creep on a single flat piece of muscle called a foot. Ripples pass along the foot, which allows these animals to glide smoothly forward.
The origins of jazz are as richly textured as the music itself. The term jazz really covers many different kinds of music. In the late 19th century, African Americans began performing the folk music known as the blues, whose origins lay in the work songs of slavery days. Within the African American community, the blues evolved into popular commercial music. In 1914, a black orchestra leader named W.C. Handy wrote the St. Louis Blues. Adapting the African-American folk idiom to European conventions of orchestration and harmony, Handy produced a hit song. The St. Louis Blues was tremendously influential among black and white musicians, and Handy's style of music became famous under the name of jazz. Early jazz musicians were active in many cities and towns throughout the southern United States. It was New Orleans, with its long tradition of African-American music, that was the home of many fathers of jazz. After World War I, the musicians of New Orleans joined the general northward migration of African Americans. The first great national center of jazz was Chicago. From there, the music entered the mainstream and even gave its name to the decade of the 1920s. Jazz, blending African American folk roots with elements of popular music and European classical traditions, has been called America's classical music.
Management requires a great deal of energy and effort, more than most people care to make. One factor that affects managers and inhibits their capacity to provide leadership is stress. Stress has lots of causes: work overload, criticism from workers, and can have negative health effects, including loss of sleep. It's a fact. Managers have to deal with stress. Some handle it by making time to be by themselves. Most have some favorite place or pastime, a beach to walk on, maybe a stream to fish in, or a game to play with the kids. It's important to have some form of rest and relaxation. Creating art, working with your hands, gardening, playing sports, the list goes on. Rest doesn't always mean inactivity. For some people, exercise
People are always talking about the problem of youth. If there is one, which I take leave to doubt, then it is older people who create it, not the young themselves. Let us get down to fundamentals and agree that the young are, after all, human beings, people just like their elders. There is only one difference between an old man and a young one. The young man has a glorious future before him, and the old one has a splendid future behind him. And maybe that is where the rub is. When I was a teenager, I felt that I was just young and uncertain, that I was a new boy in a huge school, and I would have been very pleased to be regarded as something so interesting as a problem. For one thing, being a problem gives you a certain identity, and that is one of the things the young are busily engaged in.
Thinking about getting a new tattoo? Maybe a nice 3D double helix or an I heart Higgs bosons? Well, you might wind up getting some mycobacteria with your body art. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has turned up about 24 cases of this infection from contaminated tattoo ink. Last January, public health officials in western New York State launched an investigation after a tattoo recipient reported a persistent rash, itchy red bumps all over his new tat. A skin sample tested positive for Mycobacterium chelonae, a microbe common in tap water. A list of the tattoo artist's clients turned up another 19 cases of the rash, including 14 confirmed infections with the same bug. The tattoo parlor itself was clean, no bacteria in the water supply, but a bottle of pre-mixed gray ink turned up positive. This gray wash, which is used to give tats a shaded 3D quality, was most likely contaminated during its manufacture, and has since been recalled, but not before a handful of additional cases cropped up elsewhere around the country. So if you're really itching to express yourself, a tattoo might indeed be just what the doctor ordered.
Do psychological conditions vary by sex? More boys are diagnosed with autism and more girls with depression. Scientists at the University of Rochester Medical Center want to understand any such sex differences. So the researchers studied smell and gender in nearly microscopic roundworms. What can we learn about our brains from tiny worms? Well, these creatures have a relatively simple and well-mapped nervous system. Some are male and some are hermaphroditic. Scientists presented the worms with two scents. One smelled like buttery popcorn, another like green vegetables. Hermaphrodites mostly crawled towards buttery popcorn, while males preferred vegetables. Then scientists manipulated some of the hermaphroditic neurons to behave like they were male, and the newly male worms now crawled towards the green peppery smell. What does this tell us about male and female human brains? Well, not much yet. But what surprised researchers is that brain neurons present in both sexes, like those that register smell preference, have different characteristics depending on the sex of the worm. This is a step on a path scientists hope will lead to greater understanding about our own sex differences.
Scholarships help meet financial needs of students globally and locally. Part of the recipe includes adding boiling water to the mix.